Our keynote speaker to this morning is Dr. Christine Johnson McPhail. And her bio is in your folders, but I'm going to share with you a little about Dr. McPhail. Dr. McPhail is the president of the McPhail Group, a higher education consulting firm, and founder of the Community College Leadership Doctoral Program at Morgan State University. She's also the former president and chief instructional author at Cypress College in Southern California. She also currently serves as a leadership coach for over a dozen Achieving the Dream institutions in 8 different states. Dr. McPhail is also a professional trainer with Genetics International, an organizational professional development consulting company dedicated to realizing the potential of people in organizations, the community, and at home. Dr. McPhail has served on numerous committees. She has mainly Gates Foundation's Completion by Design National Advisory Committee, the Advisory Council for the Community College Survey of Student Engagement, the National Center for Post-Secondary Research, and the Community College Research Center at Columbia Teachers College, and the Council for Study of Community Colleges. And she's also on the editorial board for the Community College Journal of Research and Practice. She has also received numerous awards and has authored and edited numerous articles and books. One of her articles is out for you today called Fighting the Execution Gap Syndrome, New Strategies for Student Success. Please welcome Dr. McPhail.
Good morning. I like that introduction, AJ. So you guys think you know me? Okay, but you don't know me yet. Let me tell you a little bit more about me here. We're going to visit classroom practices today. We're going to talk a little bit about that, and then you're going to help us understand it better. I want to tell you a little bit more about me. Sometimes those professional introductions don't quite get it for me. I want you to know people who helped me have some of the attitudes and ideas that I do have. Those are my heroes there. My mother and father, Otis and Mary Johnson. That's my champion. My husband and my friend, I call him Mac. And he's 6'6", so he's my big Mac. Those are my sons. That's Ralph, and that's Rod and me over there. I'm chilling. You like that look with the sunglasses? My Hope, my grandsons, Justin and Jordan, 18 and 20, and Julian, age 4. My buddies, my brother LG and my sister Penny, they live in Texas. You guys can tell. You knew that was something. You guys knew that accent was not New York. My friends along the way, that's President Annette Parker, President Leslie McCullough, and President Sean McKay. I had a little role to play in my introduction. You heard that I was the founding director for the Community College Leadership Doctoral Program. In one way, I interface with those folks. And you may recognize these community college legends there. The person that's about to dig into that apple pie tart stereo manor, the founder of the Learning College. In the middle is Dr. George Baker, who founded the program at North Carolina State in doctoral education. And of course, a person that probably would need no introduction, Dr. George Boggs, the former president of the American Association of Community College. Those are my road dogs. Friends that I picked up on the way or adopted me was, there's my good buddy, Peggy McIntosh. You may remember her work on white privilege, unpacking the backside. And then, of course, news, if you've spent any time in D.C., you may recognize Doris McMillan, an anchor woman there in the area. And I picked up faculty members, too, along the way. And that's some faculty members over at Roxbury Community College. They had just finished installing smart classrooms when I came for a site visit, and they were so happy about it. And of course, along the way, you have some sad times, too. That's my sister, Ella, who died on me last year, and but she did leave a spirit there with me. She asked me if I would be the grandmother to her grandson, and that's my buddy there, Quentin. And then we have fun. Don't just do this stuff with you guys all the time. I go to basketball. And that guy in the middle there, number 15, is Justin Bessard, my grandson. And he's having a good game there, as you can see. And of course, I love theater. And we find our way to Broadway. And we stalk Denzel whenever we can. So now that you know who I am, you know we're going to have some fun for the next hour or so. We're going to, in this session, I'm going to visit again the issues and teaching philosophy, the whole purpose of what we do. Why do we do what we do? We had a session a couple of days this week on the why. Why community college education is so important and the role that faculty members play in executing that mission. We're going to revisit classroom practices, go into small groups, and then we'll finish. We'll have some reflections if we have time. I like that language, Dr. Miles, a new era, service, and success. We can't keep doing things the way we used to do if we want to improve some of the stats that you guys saw earlier today. And as classroom instructors, thank you, Dr. Bradford, for saying that people don't ask for identification as to whether you're an adjunct or whatever about in the classroom. You're an instructor. You're there to teach. You're a learning facilitator. When I hear people talk about their experiences in college, I don't ever hear them say, oh, I really love room 121. That room gave me everything I needed to inspire me. I don't think so. Building and structures are important, but it's people that make the difference inside these classrooms. Nationally, the picture for student success looks a lot like what's going on here in Westchester. In some cases, it's worse nationally. That's not acceptable in a place like the United States of America. We have to do better, and we can do better. When we look at student success overall, many other people in community college who respond to the open door don't do well. That's why Lumina, that's why Achieving the Dream and Completion by Design, Complete College of America said, some student success is not good enough. We can do better. Access is not good enough. We have to look at how we can improve the outcomes, and that's what this student success thing is all about. Dr. Miles mentioned disaggregating the data. When we start taking a deep dive into the student success data, we learn that some populations are doing worse. The odds are not good for them, and those are low-income Hispanic African American students almost are likely to need remediation. You talked about 73%, but I suggest to you, once you disaggregate that 73%, it's going to be higher in a lot of areas. So why? Why do these students not perform? Yeah. When we look at the data nationwide, your data suggests too that students need remediation. They do not have role models. I see you're looking at that. Thank you for looking at the whole student experience. College costs are going up. There are a lot of hidden costs, you know that, of coming to college. Financial aid does not meet all of the students' needs. Thank you, Dr. Adams, for bringing that out. You said, why are we giving you this information? Because what we're doing is saying, we want you to have a really, really good picture of who's sitting in those seats when you come, when you walk in that room the first day. Today, students also carry a lot of responsibilities. You saw that. This is one of the first times I've seen at a presentation like this that you did talk about the needs of the students. And when we do that, we start to put a face on the students so that you can see them and their whole experiences. Students are taking too much time to get out. They're taking too many credits sometimes because they don't have the kind of technical advice that they need in order to make informed decisions. They're spending too much money and they're not graduating. Too much time to degree. We can re-engineer these experiences so we can know what these students are doing. I'm not going to just repeat what Dr. Miles said, but it tells you, look at those numbers. That's not acceptable. And you guys, you are in a unique position to help change that picture and to redesign some of those statistics. Again, too few students graduate. People don't sign up for half of a class most of the time. You know, they sign up for a whole class. And if we can get to the bottom of why they're not doing course completion, I think we can get them to completing a program, completing a degree, accomplishing their goals. That's what this is all about. Part-time students, another piece of our data. Sometimes they're overlooked. We're looking at our first time in college full-time students. We get excited about that full-time student. But those part-time students help make the numbers good too. And they're people, they have faces, they have needs, they have desires, they have aspirations. They want to be productive citizens. So let's look at that data as well. So that's why we're coming here. We looked at the data. We also look at who's teaching these classes. Adjunct faculty have responsibility for a considerable amount of the curriculum at these institutions. You are no different. Nationwide, that's the story. That's your story here. So, John Dewey, one of the most famous educators, said that if we teach today's students as we taught yesterday's, we rob them of tomorrow. So let's don't get, I am not going to change mode. Let's talk about how we can make things better. What are those needs that were identified for you earlier have implications for how we teach and how we talk to students and how we interact and engage with them. John Henry Clark, one of the famous African-American educators, talked about a teacher like an entertainer. We have to, well, you say, well, I didn't come here, I'm not an actor, I didn't come here to entertain students. Well, we're talking about capturing their attention and letting them know that you care about them. And I think it goes back to plain old-fashioned, your beliefs too. What about your teaching philosophy? How many people have actually developed a philosophy about teaching and wrote it down? Very good. You guys are much better. I'm going to go tell the class that I talked to a couple of weeks ago, you guys are way ahead of them in Westchester. But a philosophy of teaching. It's a statement about your ideas about teaching. Why do you teach? I mean, how do you teach? What do you believe? You need to be purposeful about that. And one of the things that I know for a fact, whether you feel you have a philosophy or not, whether you've written it down or not, you have one. And students can see it every day that they step into your classroom. Look at that word. Conveys your teaching values, your beliefs and goals to a broader audience. And if you set up standards that you would judge, people would judge you at your teaching. And it provides evidence of your teaching effectiveness. It's a way for you to kind of set your blueprint and frame and articulate how you interface with students on a regular basis. Educational purpose, learning goals for students, your teaching methods for assessing student learning, assessment of teaching. If we had a longer time, I'd ask you to, we would stop down and we would do an exercise and I would have you, actually when you leave in the next 3 or 4 minutes, we would have the elements of a teaching philosophy for you. So Dr. Bradford, I'm going to give you that assignment. So what you'll do is ask our folks to take a look at the values, assessment, beliefs, methods, and goals. And I've seen that, I saw a lot of that in that learning model that Dr. Miles presented to you. So on your own time, do that. Take a look at write your own philosophy and share it with other people. So this is what we're going to take a deep dive and what we will do in our small groups, we'll even get deeper into this conversation about teaching practices. How can students and faculty members improve undergraduate education? And then let's just ask you, how can we improve the education for students here at Westchester? You know, I think student success is a lot like politics. People in the field say all politics is local. I think student success is local too. I think you'd find it not very interesting if I were coming here and telling you this is the best way to do something because this is the way they're doing it at Roxbury Community College in Boston. That may be fine for them, but it won't necessarily work here because this is Westchester. So we're going to talk about how can we improve things here. And we are asking you to focus on this work because we understand how important your role is to student success. So this is the first principle in the Chickering design. Contact between students and faculty. This is what we're going to be asking you to take a look at from now on. What is it about that, about contact between faculty and students that can make student success work? Faculty concern helps students get through rough times and keep on working. Now that's where that belief comes in. I have faculty members tell me, you know, my class starts at 9 o'clock. I'm in my seat at 9. If somebody is not there by 9, I'm closing the door, end of story. Well, what about that man that has 4 kids and he's dropping them off? The wife works at night. He's dropping them off. He missed his judgment, was maybe he didn't judge the time right. He got in traffic, or the kid left his homework at home and he went back, made a decision to go back to get the homework, and he walks in 10 minutes late. Sorry, you understood the rules. You understood the rules of engagement. If you have knowledge of that student, if you take a little time to know who that student is, maybe that decision would be different. Maybe that door would still be open for John when he walked there. You think? I think so. So our values and our commitment to students and understanding them is very important. Now let me make something real clear here to you. You're teaching at a community college. A community college. Back in 1947, the framers of the Higher Education Initiative decided that America deserved a community college. They made that decision for a real important reason, and that reason was that the existing higher education structure was disenfranchising large populations of American citizens. So President Truman decided this is not acceptable, folks. Pretty much to what we're hearing President Obama talk about now. We need to take a look at the community college. You guys thought he was the first one that did that, right? No, he didn't. But anyway, the point is, back in 1947, Truman and the Truman Commission decided America needed a safety net to get people educated, and that became the community college. The community college movement. And the mission of the community college, believe it or not, Dr. Bradford, had remediation and development education, and it always had that. And newsflash to the workforce, folks, it had workforce in there too. Those of us who are traditionally transfer people and say we are a junior college, we should be in the transfer business, it had that as a mission as well. So basically, this is not new language. It is time for us to be more committed and dedicated to fulfilling the darn purpose. It's always been there, and we have not fulfilled it the way that it should. Let's recommit ourselves, and if we have to change the way that we teach, if we have to change the way these buildings are designed, if we have to change the time when classes start, who told us that the 15-week design was the only way to do that? It's not. There are institutions all over America that prove that it's not the only way. And sometimes it's not the best way. So we're talking about that. Gary Rhodes of the National Commission on Higher Education Attainment said faculty are central to enhancing quality in student attainment. Let's go to reciprocity and cooperation among students. A group will talk about that when we go into small groups. Martin Luther King said, and I love this one, we have all come on different ships, but we're all in the same boat now. And that's our community college. We're all in the same boat when we're looking at student success. We all have a role to play. you don't get a pass. So we're going to look at good learning, like good work is collaborative and social, not competitive and isolated. If there are 3 or 4 students in that classroom that's not getting it, they're not getting it, we have a responsibility as faculty members to connect with those students and see that they can. Active learning. There's no longer me standing in front of the classroom preaching to the students. It's engagement. Student engagement is a product of motivation and active learning. And if it's not there, something is missing. We need to take a look at how do we get students engaged and excited about the learning outcomes. Prompt feedback. Peter Angelo and Pat Cross talk about feedback and how important it is. In many of our conversations with faculty, we talk about how often do we give quizzes, how often do we meet with students and let them know how they're making. And you know, our traditional attitude of early alert and midterm grades is we got a 15-week model, we got grades, we got to do midterm grades at week 8. Well, kind of like the people who needed it are already gone. They don't know where they are. So we need to take a look at a cadence of feedback and develop accountability to give students information about how they're doing early at various points along the way. Week 10 is too late, folks. Time on task. Some of the work that we're looking at American students, not only in the K-12 sector in higher education, is that they have a very short attention span. They do not spend the time that's required to master things. We have to figure out ways to make that better and communicate and connect with students about the importance of mastery and developing competencies, and that you can't do that sometimes in your sleep. You have to spend the time on task. Malcolm Gladwell talks about that. How many of you believe that, like Malcolm Gladwell, that if you spend the quality time, I think he calls it the 10,000 hour rule, that you can become an expert at? I think that works for everybody except me when it comes to trying to play golf. Okay, so we're going to, in your small groups, you're going to talk about time on task, and we'll figure out how do we get students more engaged in that. This one is a killer. High expectations are the key to everything. That's Sam Walton. Familiar with who he is? Okay, he should know. At least in some areas he should know, right? So we're talking about if you expect me to fail, I will, right? If you expect me to succeed, I will. So we're going to talk about how do we, as faculty members, raise those expectations so more students can be successful. This student success game has a common element in it. We will need to shift from helping a few students be successful to helping more students be successful, to helping all of our students be successful. And that's a huge paradigm shift, because even our funding models are not built upon student success, they are built upon enrollment. How many people are in the seat has been our performance indicator, not how many people complete. Okay? So we do need to make that shift. And that's a very important thing for us to keep in our paradigm. What happened? What did I do? High expectations. That was just to get your attention. Diverse talents and ways of learning. Not a one-size-fits-all. Everybody that walk in your classroom is not going to look like you. They're not going to walk like you. They're not going to go to the same church as you do. So let's get with the program. We have diversity in our classroom. We need to accept it and celebrate it. You guys recognize that name at the bottom? What did she say? What we have to do is find a way to celebrate our diversity and debate our differences without fracturing our community. That latter part, we are very weak at that, aren't we? If you don't understand me, just go on. I'm going to be the way that I am anyway. You can't change me. But you can change yourself. And you do that by getting to know what this is all about. It's about helping America be better. So this is what we're going to do in our small group discussions. You guys can all read, so I'm not going to read it to you, but this is important work, people. And this is one of the few institutions that I've seen that not only bring the adjunct people together, but they want to know what's on your mind. They want to know, how can we provide the resources to help you get in that classroom and be in the best condition to teach? That's huge. That's very important to this college. And I'm delighted to be able to be here today with you to have this conversation. So you're going to look, you have been assigned a number, I believe it's on your, everybody know where the numbers are? It's on your name tag. So this is what's going to take place. And AJ, are you going to tell them, or will one of the deans come up and tell them where these numbered rooms are located? And those are the topics that we're going to break into. You're going to go into the small groups, and then you will come back in here and report out. Okay? Okay, the way we will do this, if you will take about 3 minutes, we're going to go 1 through 8. Okay, does that work for you? Okay, so who is reporting? Are all the reporters down here? Then you don't need any further introduction. Group 1. Come on down.
Way down. Okay. So we're ready to begin? Yes. Okay, so I'm Corinne Balducci from Group 1. Our topic was contacts between students and faculty. We had a very passionate group, so we had a lot of great topics to discuss, but at the end of it all, we decided that we came down into 3 buckets in terms of topics. First was the practical, which we'll go into. Then we talked about redirecting and resources, as well as relationships. So under practical, we discussed how we needed more, as an adjunct, more physical space to be with the student. I think we can all relate to the fact that we're in the classroom with a student, there's another class coming in after, and we really don't have that time to talk to the student, especially if they're having some personal issues or issues with the class itself that they're struggling with. So the physical aspect under practical was something that we discussed. We also talked about electronic communication and making ourselves available practically with the student. So not just with the college email, but it was brought up too by many of the adjuncts that we want to give our personal email as well, because often we can respond a little faster and quicker to that student and to their needs. We also talked a little bit about having time or office time. As an adjunct, we really don't have that opportunity to have specific designated office time. And also practical aspect was the technology. Making use of the technology that we have available to us, including Blackboard, being able to direct our students to Blackboard and all the resources there. So that really brings us to the second bucket, which is redirecting to resources. Having those students be directed to what is available on campus. And as an adjunct, I know we often aren't aware, or some of us are not aware of what the resources are available, or if we do, how do we direct them to that resource? So in terms of that redirection, I think also that really relates into relationships. Redirecting to resources and relationships kind of combine. Relationships was our third bucket, so there's a lot of intertwining between redirecting to resources and relationships. Getting into the relationship aspect, we talked quite a bit about on that first day of class, not just saying to the student, introduce yourself, what are you studying, but maybe on a more personal level to ask them, what are some challenges that you may be facing this semester, or things that I can know about to help you further your education, or maybe redirect you to resources that are available. So you have that aspect of that redirecting and resources with relationships. And that's something you can do on the first day. We talked about being available by email. Some adjuncts do give out their phone number because they don't have an office, so they will give out their cell phone number so students can contact them, and the response can be in timely fashion back to the student. We also talked a little bit about letting the student know your name. I know it sounds very basic, but often we hear that students go to other resources and say, I'm struggling with this class, but they don't remember the professor's name. So make sure that your student knows you as a professor, what your name is, and how to contact you. My group can chime in at any time if I'm leaving anything out, because like I said, we had a very passionate group.
Good morning, Francisco Rodriguez Vera. I teach in the math department, and my group consists of 15 people from all departments: business, economics, math, English, and experiences from 2 years up to 30 years of working here as an adjunct. So the recommendations, the bottom line is that in the topic of reciprocity and cooperation among the students, these practices that were shared by these people might be applicable to all disciplines, regardless of what subject you are teaching. The first is a good practice. One of the teachers says, Catherine, from teaching statistics math, greatly improved the performance of the students, making them work in groups, giving tests and to solve the test in a group of students, and only picking one test out of the students, and then that grade that test, and that would be the grade of the students. So that would force them to work on a collaborative way. One barrier that we identified is that given the nature of the community college, commuting people, part-time students, sometimes it's difficult to get groups of students working, especially out of the class. But we also hear a good practice, the opportunity of working in groups to determine the strengths of the individuals based on work for an objective, the objective of a project. Given by Professor Judith Chang. Another good practice is using or asking the more advanced students to explain to people that are confused or are less advanced some of the concepts. An excellent practice that was shared. Let me give the credit. Jason in the math department is the interaction with the groups among themselves and with the teacher. Using tool remind.com, so the teacher, the instructor can send text messages to the students without revealing the own phone number. Another practice from Jason too is that start the interaction among the students from the first day. when he mentioned this, I almost remember in some of the churches that when you come in, the priest says, okay, say good morning or to you, to the other person that is next to you. So Jason does the same thing. He, from the first class, he encourages students to talk with the neighbor and then start forming this interaction and keeping that interaction living to form a community of learners. But that's an excellent practice that was shared for us this morning. In the case of computer projects, Barbara, working in computer projects that people are very creative, forming companies and with giving the names to the companies and really getting the people working together. My 2 cents on this is that regarding the grading policy, in my syllabus at the beginning of the class, at the beginning of the course, what I established is that nobody is working against or competing with each other. Everybody is just accumulating points in the homeworks, in the quizzes, in the midterm exam, and the final exam, and the attendance. And I'm just the point keeper, and at the end of the semester, I add the points, and I just go to the WCC grading policy and see what letter corresponds. There is no competition. Many people are kind of with the idea that competing or curbing or anything like that. From the first day, I established that there is no competition among the students. And also I encourage them to work in groups, but definitely the practice from Jason is much better because, believe it or not, if you are not, if you don't tell the students to do something, they don't really do it. It has been an enlightening experience. I believe in continuous improvement. My work experience is working in the nuclear industry, and continuous improvement is the word of the day every day. Thank you.
Hello everyone, can you hear me? Yes. Okay, I'm going to report on active learning. This is group number 3. We were lucky enough to have the interim dean, Maria Boada, lead our group. We went around the room, everybody spoke. There was really remarkable agreement among all of us, and we represented very different topics to teach, subjects such as early childhood, English, math, and so on. But there was remarkable agreement among us. Basically, to sum it all up in a nutshell, it's the student owning their learning, his or her learning. So student ownership of learning. Now, that sounds very abstract. How do we achieve that? Well, we have basically come upon 3 different ways. Engagement, and some of these, by the way, will echo with what so many people have said already, what we just heard, what we heard in the many speeches this morning, but it all goes together. Students engage with one another in a secure environment. That's the first thing. The second thing we all agree is peer-promoted learning, which again is connected with what I just said, and also a personal. This is the third one: personal buy-in to the learning experience. The student finds his or her relevance to himself or herself from the work. They bring themselves to the work. they learn from what, some people might call mistakes, but it's just, I don't even use that word when I teach, just how can we make it better, The students, so to amplify on this, I don't want to take up too much time, the students, some people pointed out how important it is that the students see the instructor is on their side. As has been said many times, it's a learning community. The professors, the students, everybody, they're all together. We learn from our students because we listen to them. We, as was said so eloquently this morning, we learn who they are. How? By listening to them. Now, of course, work has to be done. Our job is to facilitate it. Again, it's student-centered. They take charge of their learning. They need to be engaged. They engage themselves. Hands-on tasks. Now, it was pointed out, in some disciplines that's easier than in others, right? In art, everything, not everything, of course there's, critiques and so forth, but, hands. Sometimes it's all thought and so forth. It was also pointed out that self-evaluation is very important in the process of assessment. Again, it comes back to the ownership. They have to own their learning. They have to be who they are with that material. And the class engages as a whole, just like our group engaged as a whole. I can't say there was any disagreement. There was only the same ways of saying slightly different ways of saying the same thing. People did point out role modeling. Again, it's something like, rescue techniques or EMT and RADTech and so forth. Role modeling is completely necessary, but hey, in English it is too. We who teach English may sometimes say, okay, you tell me what this author said, and so forth. We change places, and we learn. So the students are connecting themselves to what they're learning. This is active learning. This is very important. It is not, as was said this morning, somebody with chalk or whatever lecturing to a bunch of people who have full-time jobs and families and, commitments. Any questions or additions? Anything? Thank you very much.
Our group was called Prompt Feedback, and I think this was very, very timely. I'm a new adjunct, so this was very helpful to me. And our group had many different departments represented, and also had from new instructors all the way to those instructors that are actually 20 years or more. So that was very, very positive. First of all, in terms of prompt feedback, we talked about the locomotion of learning, which I thought was fascinating to me. Transactional feedback, student to student, criticism, very important. Peer-to-peer criticism, which I thought was quite interesting. We wanted to talk about good energy. We talked about being engaged in truth, which sort of resonated with me. Short, formative assessment, supportive feedback. We also talked about what's called the 2-minute test, which I thought was kind of interesting, about giving back immediate feedback back to students, which talks about as soon as that 2 minutes after you have a lecture, asking for feedback right then and there, and being critical of feedback. Prompt, real-time feedback, strategic, continuous feedback. We also talked about kinds of feedback. Let's see. I can't read my own handwriting here. Feedback on absences. So for instance, if a student is out that day, the professor calling that student back and finding out why they were absent, being proactive in terms of responding to students' absence. Very important. Also, asking, where were you? If you weren't there, actually physically there, they might have been a little checked out that particular day. So getting some feedback at the end of class or at the break and maybe asking them how we can be of assistance to that. We also talked about personal reading, etc., giving them some special assignments together. Then we got into talking about more about the group activities, so small group discussion, but actually as the instructor going around the room, getting some feedback about those small groups, and right then and there giving some feedback. And some of our more experienced people said they actually give feedback and they write something right away. They used the terminology in novella. Obviously, we had a lot of English professors. And informational and observational boards. So I think it was very good. Thanks so much.
Hello, I'm Holly Dukopster from the biology department, and we were talking about time on task. And we actually talked about many of the other topics that have already come up, but I'll try to just pinpoint the ones that we talked about that were a little bit different from some of the things that have been mentioned already. We talked about living in an age of instant gratification, and that students are so used to getting information and having immediate feedback from their friends and from society in general that they're sometimes not understanding that you have to sometimes work at something and put time in. We also talked about this is not an extension of high school. In high school, everything was kind of spoon-fed to students, and then they would just study specific things and pass the test and then move on. But this is a different time and a different place for them, and the expectations are different here. So we thought about some of the things about getting to know the students and their apprehensions and their nervousness, and understanding what it is they're thinking about what school will be for them and what is actually expected of them once they're here. We thought that perhaps giving students an example of what a model student would be, and the amounts of time that you might put into a task, giving some kind of timeline, some kind of structure, so students have an idea of what might be expected from week to week or from month to month when they're in your class. Also, instructors need time, because getting to know students is going to be a long process, and getting to understand their situations and being able to work with them in the best possible way will also, so instructors also need to take a great deal of time, which is often, not always available. We have to acknowledge the realities of life of students. Sometimes they can't get to class, and maybe there are opportunities that they can make up that time, perhaps through something like Blackboard. If we post our assignments on Blackboard, post our notes on Blackboard, perhaps have chats or discussions on Blackboard, students can actually engage outside of the class if it's difficult for them to get to class for some reason. Let's see. So we want resources available to students, and online discussions among students also. That's time on task. They can relate to each other. They can discuss issues, and the instructor can just then, kind of sit back and listen and watch and perhaps comment, but see the students interacting and thinking about their work. So again, that would be more time on task using technology. Another suggestion was we could start a rules of engagement where students would actually start to think about what would happen if a student were late, didn't come to class, didn't put in the time required for whatever, if they were using their cell phones or something like that, and then actually the class as a whole could respond to some of these questions or some of these issues, and as a whole come up with some solutions to those problems. And again, this is sort of a way of teaching problem solving to the students, and it gets them an idea of how to respond to not putting in the time or not appropriately behaving in class. So we had a great group, and it was lots of discussion, and again, we talked about other things that were in other groups, but we found this to be a really worthwhile exercise. So, thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is Dr. Rolando Hodel and I teach chemistry. I will talk about expectations, and if you teach chemistry, math or something like this, you know, you say you teach chemistry and the expectations run wild. Right? So, if you're sitting, I think that expectations is kind of like the pink elephant in the room. Everyone can actually see and know your expectations, even if you're not aware of them, if you're not very clear on them. So, just to put you all at ease, just in case you're sitting in your seat thinking, interesting dress she's wearing, I wonder where she got that from. This dress is from West Africa. My main job is to work in Cameroon and help the people there to build a pharmaceutical infrastructure. So, expectations. We had a very interesting discussion, and at the beginning it led us down a memory lane. When you teach, you have expectations. You come in the classroom, as human beings, we have expectations. So, one of the people in the room told us about, went down memory lane of the time after integration when she, as a student, experienced being put in what she calls tracking. I never even heard about it, and you were, as a student, put in a track that was either vocational or college material. And this is where you kind of were stuck, and if you wanted to switch, you really had a hard time. That was very interesting. But there is, the other part is what we as the expectation in part comes from the education, right? Where you're coming from and so on. And in the group we discussed for quite some time that what we are experiencing is what we're bringing in as expectations. And also we respond to it, right? Like when I say I teach chemistry, there was a participant who's teaching mathematics, which is very similar. The students come in and they are generally afraid. I often experience that my students think that I would trick them. I was raised, and Mrs. Brown just explained it to me, I was raised in Germany, so I was not brought up in the English system. And Mrs. Brown told me that there it was actually quite normal that the teachers were actually, it was part of the education that you were tricked. So, when I say that expectations like the pink elephant in the room, what we discussed a lot in the group is to go in the classroom and say these things. Don't let that pink elephant just float around. Tell your students, I tell my students, I said, I will not trick you. I said, I will teach you everything you need to succeed. It is up to you to put in the 6 hours. We always agree on 6 hours a week. Because then when the grades go down, I go, did you study 6 hours last week? Yeah, then you know what it is. What I also found interesting was actually, I never thought much about it, but what do I actually expect from my students? To be honest, in chemistry, we're so used to that a third of them drops out at withdrawal day. One big problem is always mathematics, so I wish that all my students would take Mrs. Brown's class first. I teach math for the first 2 or 3 weeks, so I'll be able to teach them chemistry, right? So I think a lot was already said that was also said in our group, and I thank the group. It was really interesting for me. I learned a lot, and I thank you.
He's on his way. Good morning. James Mitrione, Criminal Justice Department. Our discussion on the facilitator, Dr. Brown Evans, was on diversity. And I can tell you we had several speak and give key factors in the importance of talking about diversity. Right from the start, we talked about having them understand that we are all human. And I think I will start my classes now by playing Christina Perry's I Am Only Human to begin to calm everyone in the room once they hear about your background. And I explain to them my line of work. So we talked about how to assess how the students learn, multiple ways of responding, use of the academic support center, teach and outline method was brought up so that they grasp the reading skills and bring it back into the classroom rather than just saying, this is the textbook that we're going to utilize. Multiple assessments and diversity in teaching methods as far as multiple modalities as well. Then we talked about determining students' personal life, their characteristics. Explain to them how you have come to the college and began your career. See how they are expanding. Are they also working? Again, human experiences. Project-based learning, higher order thinking, group activities, in-class interaction, as much as possible, to stray them from picking up a phone or looking out a window and being easily distracted. Use of real-world examples, and in my field, it's utilized all the time, how we can talk about. There's no more diverse world than what we have right now. Display cultural sensitivity. Again, what has mentioned to us from the past. Teach interaction. And then make it the energy of the classroom. And last, obtain feedback from the students. Ask them what worked and what didn't work. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Toby Grossfield. I teach in the math department. And my group, which was number 8, we're not up there. But really, what we were talking about is what we need in order to be effective teachers in the classroom. And we talked about 3 major things, really pretty much already been spoken about. So I think there's a great deal of agreement among faculty here, even though we approach things from different places. The first thing we talked about was that as teachers, in order to promote success in our students, we need more information on instructional technology and also on information literacy training, which we can get part of it from the library, but part of it from different departments. We talked about the importance of orientation. We lauded this program today, which we think was wonderful because it was a school-wide program and it brought together people from different departments, but also orientation programs within departments. And we think mentorships are very important. And that would be a person, particularly for a new adjunct, a person to get practical information from when you are a new adjunct. Things like how to use the services that are available on campus, including the tutoring services, and if you have a student who, one person talked about a student who had some mental problems, and she didn't know how to get that for the student. So we need a practical person within our own department or not to help us with the practical things on campus. And then the third thing, which my group was very passionate about, was that we need more and more private office space. We have it now. Some departments have some office space within the buildings, but it's not enough. What we feel, if we are to effectively work with students on a one-to-one basis and get to know our students, well, you can't usually stay around in a classroom after the class is finished because there is another class coming in. And for a student to be talking to you about their problems out in the hallway is just awful. So we feel we need more office space for faculty to interact with other faculty, but also to interact with and work with students on a one-to-one basis and in as private a situation as we can get. So, it could be something that everybody here is in agreement with, but that's what we were talking about. So that was our group.
Thank you guys very much. You guys did it. If we were playing football, I'd say we had a touchdown this morning. We suited up to play and we decided we were going to win. I called today VIP Day. You would probably say, yeah, adjunct folks are very important people. That's not what I'm talking about. My VIP is voicing ideas publicly. Voicing ideas publicly. That means Dr. Bradford, Dr. Miles, it's on. The adjunct folks have said, we came to voice our ideas publicly. Do they have your attention now? I think so. And of course, Chickering had 7 principals, and those of you who know me know I'm going to add to it. You're going to add value to the work that's in the field, so I did an 8, and that was called resources, because you cannot do this in a vacuum. You need support to do the kind of work that you're doing. Student success is not for sissies. You need courage to do student success. That means that you will get out of your comfort zone. You will redesign buildings. You will redesign policies. You will redesign practices. You will, I hope, redesign the way that you think about students and the way that you think about yourselves as learning facilitators. So I added a few things up here about resources. What can a college do? And then everything that you talked about today in those recommendations should embellish this list. And when Dr. Bradford and Dr. Miles and I were talking about this, you know what they told me? They did not want this to be event training. That you would come here one day and you would walk away. This one day, walk away, never to be heard from again. That's not it. You have voiced your ideas publicly. You've gone on record with some ways that you think that you could improve instruction and student success at this institution, and I believe you've been heard. So, This is what should happen now. Community colleges redefining student success. In the past, we said we focus on success and equal enrollment, growth, and what? Reputation. We are a big institution. We have lots of students, but what happened to them? Okay? That's where we are now, in the future and the current. Success equal quality, innovation, accountability, and completion. And you can continue to add that because the success of students at this institution is in your hands. So, if we do our job right, we're looking at different kinds of results, higher graduation, transfer rates, more on-time graduates, closing the achievement gap, trained workforce, stronger economy, fewer lost credits, saving time and money. Trustees would like to hear that, won't they? Yeah. That's it. I think we've done our job. I thank you for your time this morning, and I put it back in the hands of the administration. Yes, sir.